Greetings, traveler.
What's up? In today's video, I'd like to bring you up to speed on all the things that have changed in the recent months in the arena. Now, if you've read my Journey to Un'Goro meta report, you'll be reasonably well informed on how to play in this meta, but there are still some significant changes that have occurred in the last couple months. So let's have a look at it, shall we? The biggest change that happened was at the start of June. Blizzard significantly increased the weapon offering bonus and at the same time decreased the Un'Goro offering bonus. Now, what this means is that you'll be seeing less Un'Goro specific cards such as Spike Rich Steed or Volcano. So that on its own already affects the meta. That's going to affect class balance, that's going to affect how you draft classes, that's going to affect how you play against classes. But the weapon offering bonus significantly affected mainly Paladin. Paladin went from a good class, right? Like top 3, right? To pretty much the uncontested #1 pick every time. It's just super solid. Another thing that has happened is the Frost Festival started. Right now you start your arena run at 1 win, and at the same time you get 1 free arena run per week. So you might say, how does that change the meta? That's nothing specific, right? You just get more wins and there's probably more people playing. Now, the fact that there are more people playing means that there are just more people in general that don't really know what the meta is. So that creates what I like to call a win inflation. So you'll see a lot more people at higher wins that without Frost Festival, without the influx of newer players and without the extra win bonus, they wouldn't be there. So that means that you see a lot more unconventional things and it's a bit harder to read the meta and play around it. But I will still do my best for you guys to share with you my findings, the stuff I've experimented with and what I'm performing best with now in this pretty crazy meta where a lot of weird things are happening. So why don't we start with a quick overview of where the classes are at in my opinion, and then we'll go over how you can abuse the current state of the meta. Paladin #1, as mentioned earlier, is just super strong. They were already really good at the start of Un'Goro. You couldn't really say #1, I think. I think Rogue and Mage, both with more Meteors, more Valspines, were extremely oppressive and they could keep the Paladin off the board. Well, maybe Mage not so much, but definitely Rogue could just push Pally off board. So I think I would have put Paladin top 3, maybe top 2, but definitely not uncontested #1. Now, because they increased the weapon offering bonus, cards like Vine Cleaver are not as rare as they should be because they obviously benefit from the weapon offering bonus. True Silver is still a really good card. Rally Blade is really good to keep you in the early game. So they just, they're extremely strong right now. I'm putting Rogue second because of that. Rogue still deals with Paladin fairly well, but it's by no means an auto win. If the Paladin has the right cards at the right time, it's still going to be an extremely difficult matchup for the Rogue. I'm putting Mage at 3, and this is almost debatable. I'm putting it 3 just because it has so many good cards, and you just have a chance to high roll your draft. But my results with Mage have been, I don't know, I'm putting it 3 just because, it's Mage, and it's strong, and you can high roll your draft. But #4 will probably surprise you, it's Warlock. Now, I know a lot of people go like, wait, Warlock, is that a class right now? But I feel it just thrives in this environment. The life tap ability is really good in this meta, and I will elaborate on that later as I explain how to abuse this particular meta. But I've been doing really well with Zoo and even reasonably well with slightly slower Warlocks. By that same reason, I have Priest on 5. Now this might sound even crazier for people who are used to my channel. Like, wait, Shady plays Priest? What happened? I'm just going with what works right now because I am still playing for leaderboard. So as a player, I have to put my personal preference aside and say, okay, hey, if it works, and I'll play it. And right now for me, Priest is definitely working. Then number 6, I've got Hunter. Now, I feel here it starts to get a little muddy, and you can definitely shift one class for another. You can exchange Hunter with Shaman, maybe Shaman with Hunter. I put them 6th and 7th. But Hunter just hasn't felt as competitive right now to me, and it's felt really risky. Once again, more about that in the playing section of the video. And then you've got Warrior and Druid. I think Warrior is better than Druid. I might even put Warrior over Shaman. Like I said, it gets a little muddy here. But let's just put those 4 classes around, the same, area over there at the bottom, and then, you've got the other 5 doing well. All right, so what are my findings? How do you abuse this meta? How do you get a higher win rate? After some failures, I've realized that greedy decks are just really good right now. And this is my theory. Love, put your tinfoil hats on, right? It's my theory. A lot of new players enter the arena. So not only do you play against a lot of new players early on, you play against weaker players in general later on who beat the newer players. So it's not necessarily that at 6-0 you'll face a complete noob, but you will face someone who generally doesn't really get 6-0, but he's better than the noobs, so hey, he's 6-0, right? So you got a little lucky with the matchmaking, you got a decent deck, this and that. In general, newer players are really not that good at pressuring you. So what this means is you can get away with a lot more. This also, now it makes sense why Warlock is doing so well with me. If you can't pressure a Warlock, you just life tap and draw 2 cards a turn. And even if your cards aren't that good, if you play, if you get 2 cards per turn, you're going to get there eventually. The same thing with Priest. Priest has the problem that when it doesn't get on the board, it doesn't do much, and it gets rushed down, and it's kind of hard to stay alive. But if your opponent isn't very good at pressuring you, you can just, do okay, and then once it gets to the late game, you have the advantage. You'll have cards like Free from Amber, you'll have cards like Mind Control, these really, really big powerhouses in the late game. I've recently had 2 drafts do well. One of them had double Mind Control, another draft had quadruple Free from Amber. So before this expansion, or before this event, the Frost Festival, I probably wouldn't have gone with quadruple Amber, just because it's a little bit too much. If you get them early on, you can be an auto loss. But because you're getting pressured a lot less right now, we have had a lot of games where we've had 3 Ambers in our hand by turn 6 and still won that, just because we got by and then we just started playing Ambers, and our opponents obviously couldn't deal with that, especially if you get cards like Yashiraj and Ysera. It's crazy. So that's my main finding. Playing greedy decks, it does not get punished right now. And occasionally you'll get the guy that understands tempo and that will completely destroy you, but that's okay. You're still playing a card game. You can't win every game. And it is my experience that if you play a more tempo-oriented deck, say you're playing Hunter, you can beat yourself a lot easier with Hunter. And what I mean there is, you don't draw your 2-on-2, you don't draw your 1-on-1. Your opponent just happens to have that AoE when you can beat it. Whereas when you're playing the greedy deck, it is up to your opponent to make the plays rather than up to you. Now I know that sounds weird, but in this particular meta, I'm much more comfortable with just saying, hey, can you pressure me? And if not, I'll win the game, rather than I am going to pressure you. Because it feels a lot more consistent right now to be, quote unquote, the defender. So that's why Warlock and Priest for me have been doing really well. I've played 4 Warlocks in this month's leaderboard attempt, total average 9.5. And before that, we've had, I think, 4 12 wins in Un'Goro with Warlock, especially after June when the change happened. Another 11 wins, so the class is doing really well for me. That's why I hesitated putting it on 3, but I'm like, well, let's not go crazy here. People are gonna bring out the pitchforks, be like, Mage has to be top 3 shady, can't be any other way. All right, cool. So guys, that was my video on how I feel the meta has changed. So TLDR, draft greedy decks, be the defender, just experiment with it. You'd be surprised at what you can get away with right now in this meta. Alright guys, if you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time.